So I'm going to take you through the overview of what's happening in this sprint. And for every call that we do in the sprint, we're going to have a conversation up front around the topic of the sprint. And then the last hour of the call, we are going to be talking about the strategic pieces in your business where you need answers and where you need to know your next step. I've set aside 30 minutes at the front of each of the calls to have a sprint conversation. We all know that's probably going to be a little bit closer to 40 minutes, 45, once we all get settled. And I want you to not feel rushed through the material. But I want to make sure we have ample room to have those other discussions. So we're gonna see where we land with those pieces. Does that sound like a good plan? Great. If you can all just double check that, and this is the fun part about Growth Lab, and this is the fun part about our community. Every week we've got new people who are coming into our lives and coming into our community. And so as we have new people coming in, I'm gonna start every call in a similar way. We're going to throw down a question that everyone can put into the chat. I'm also going to invite you, unless you are like getting changed and getting ready, like part of the culture of hanging out here is if you are capable of putting on your camera. I would love it if you could put on your camera because there's such beautiful smiley faces here. And if everyone could go up to their three dots in the top right, make sure that your name is there, and then just put your social handle there. Do what Elaine's done, do what Derek's done. I haven't even done that. Do as I say, not as I do, but I'm gonna do it too, so that we can all find each other. So when we say cool things or we're looking for help or different things are happening inside of our businesses, you know how you can reach people both in the Slack channel and in this room. On that note, I want you to say the first word that comes to mind when I say SEO. Elaine captured how I would normally feel about it. Marie, LOL, frustration, ugh, yes, visibility, vomit. Okay, this is exactly how I feel too. Braden and I have worked together with conversations with respect to marketing for the better part, frankly, the last 5 years. Fully, he ran his own company, and then we came together from a high validity perspective. And every year we would talk about marketing, and I would just be like, heads up, Braden, just so you know, here's where I'm speaking. And if you have any insight, I would love for you to share. And if you don't know who I'm talking about when I say Braden, Braden is our CTO, our Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at High Validity. And he's quite a genius at searchability. And every year I would say, Braden, here's our marketing plan. He's like, there's a big piece missing. I'm like, what's that? And every year he would say SEO is missing from the list. And every year I would look at him and I was like, I'm just going to pretend that SEO is not something we need to have in our business because it is a massive can of worms. When we talk about back-end searchability, it's going to necessitate that I say things like Google keywords. And this was back in the day where everyone was on a WordPress site. I'm like, now we have to talk about an SEO plugin. And we're going to have to talk about H1 headers. And we're going to have to talk about like full site schemas and markups. And I was like, Braden, as soon as I say these words, everyone is going to break into hives, or they're just going to quietly hit the leave button at the bottom of the page and not come out. So I was like, it's just not to my strategic advantage to talk about SEO, and it's a can of worms I don't want to address. The truth is, when we talk about this type of searchability, is that the reason it fits so beautifully inside of Growth Lab is that one, the good old days of SEO, where a guy was handling it from his mom's basement on your behalf, those days are over. The other reason why it belongs inside the Growth Lab room is because it is a very high point of leverage for you in your business. When your search capacity on your site is set up well, what it means is you are being found while you sleep. You are being found while you're working with patients. It is a marketing vertical in your business that's working on your behalf behind the scenes. So we're going to take a major risk here and we're actually going to talk about it. And I'm going to take you through it at the kind of level, and I mean high level, that I would want as it pertains to these types of questions. So you're going to have an opportunity over the course of the 6-week sprint where Braden, and I'll tell you the day, he's coming in on June 3rd. He's going to be here for the full 90 minutes to talk about the architecture and the minutia of searchability at this juncture in time in 2026, because it is not just about SEO. It's actually a small portion of it. He's going to be able to answer those technical questions, and he's going to take you through in particular, I'm going to seed it, but he'll take you through in particular how 95% of what we're talking about here is already taken care of on your behalf on the High Validity platform. Because I already preempted this, that I know when I talk about SEO and searchability and findability, that it makes you want to throw up. So the big question for us strategically has been, how can we build this into the platform from day one so that you don't actually have to do anything? So I'm going to take you through how to do that. I'm going to take you through how you can find your searchability report card, which is already built into the back end of High Validity for every single page that you have. And where you're not sitting in the A+ range already, we're going to talk about exactly what needs to happen for you. And we can talk about it at a high level because right on your High Validity page, it's going to say, your paragraph is too long. Would you like me to go in and help you fix it? And you're going to say yes, and it'll go bloop. You're now up to an A+ rating for searchability on that page. What we're trying to remove is the need for this to be a block for you in your marketing. So what we're going to cover today is I'm going to take you through what the 6-week sprint is going to look like. And we're going to lay down some of the foundational terminology that you need to know with respect to the search function of running your business. I'm also going to hand you an audit today, and I'm going to give you 2 audits that you can play with behind the scenes. The first audit is for you to run on your own website. It is high level. It is the kind of stuff you should know about this major marketing tool that you're sitting with. And if you're already on High Validity, you're going to pass most of those things right out of the gate. But if you're not, if you're in WordPress and other places, I know we've got people on other platforms, these are some key things you need to know. Because what's happening for a huge amount of our industry, I'm not going to say this room, but for our industry, is their website is anti-marketing them. And what I mean by anti-marketing is it loads really slowly. The headings and the fonts don't actually work in a convention that the large language models, ChatGPT and Claude, can read. You are an expert in 8 different things, so you're not actually being positioned as an authority for anything. You still have someone managing your SEO who functions off of keywords, which is a strategy that really started to die out about 18 months ago. And so you're putting money and energy and language and architecture into your site into a model that is not findable for you. And you're competing against sites and architecture that know what they're doing. About 8 months ago, this is the last thing I'll say before I'll bring up some slides. So you've got some visuals going on in the background. About 8 months ago, Google got really upset with ChatGPT. I'm sure there's all sorts of other wars, but this is just like forward-facing. How does it affect us as business owners on a day-to-day basis? And what they realized is the way ChatGPT could work as a search function for people is it would essentially go over to Google, ask the same question, and then index and pull up, you know how Google at the bottom, it's like page 1, 2, 3, 4, and you always want to be on page, 1 through 3. But listen, you could go up to 45 pages of naturopathic doctors in North America, for example. And all ChatGPT was doing is it would go in, it would index and pull from all of those different sites. And Google went, wait a second, we don't want you to be highly effective for people over here off the backbone of what we architected here. So what Google decided to do is it would only index the top 10 search results. So if you had worked really hard to get yourself onto the top of page 3, and depending on what your niche is and what you're focused on, that actually might have taken a considerable amount of work. Suddenly, you weren't going to be found at all. You might as well have been on page 100. So the game of how we are being found has shifted and changed. So we're going to step into the CEO primer edition of what searchability looks like in 2026 on Google, on LLM platforms in particular, so that it's working on your behalf. So with that said, if you have a new word to describe your sentiments towards this, you can drop that in the chat. And then I'm going to pull up that presentation because I'm still on the road, so I don't have my two screens. So I'm not nearly as slick as I want to imagine I am. Let me just make sure that I pull this up for us, that you're getting the right thing. Okay, Elaine, we have pulled back from sitting on the bathroom floor to like lying on the couch watching Netflix. I feel like this is good. We've made some shifts. As we move through this conversation, the other thing that's going to come up is I'm going to have Nicole drop two audits for you. And Nicole, I'll let you know when we do that because it's going to come up about halfway through. One audit for you that you can look through on your site. The other audit, if you've got one, for your SEO guy. And I don't think they actually have a title beyond that. Everyone's got an SEO. They've got an SEO guy, and this is just an audit you can have them, and they can hand that data back to you. So let me pull this up and make sure that this is going to work. Can you guys see this? Okay, let's see if, again, we're just going to set the stage for it. And then we're going to move into a general conversation with respect to strategy in your business or related to these pieces. So I want to give you a sense of like where we're going to go. So the goal over the course of the next 6 weeks, I cannot emphasize this enough, is not to turn you into the SEO person. Please don't be tempted to do that. That is not the rule. You are the CEO in your business, but there's stuff that you need to know. You need a primer on these pieces. So one, you're not paying for things you shouldn't be paying for. And two, you know how to ask the right questions. So I always like to say my friend Tony Robbins, who's really not my friend at all, but one of the quotes I just remember from like the first time I was ever introduced to him is that this idea that the quality of your life is tied to the quality of your questions. And I would argue the quality of your business is going to be tied to the quality of the strategic questions that you ask. So the goal here is we're putting you in a position where you know how to think about this and ask strategic questions accordingly. If I wanted you to become SEO experts, I would not be leading this sprint. I want to be really clear on this. So I am not coming at this as this world-renowned expert on these pieces. I too am coming at this as a CEO who needs to understand these positioning pieces. Braden will come in on June 3rd as an expert in this domain to go really deep and nuanced. So if you have a really deep, nuanced question, you can ask it, and I'll be really transparent and honest if I can't answer it, and we're going to save it for that deeper conversation on June 3rd. So here's what this is going to look like so that you have a sense. We're going to talk about searchability as a primer up top, and I'm going to introduce you to the audits. I'm going to introduce you to some core terminology that you need to know about and have a reference point to go deeper on. Any of these things you want to go deeper on, I'm going to recommend turn it into a prompt and turn it into a mini course for yourself if you're the kind of person who needs to know every last detail. I'm very intentionally going to keep it high level. Next week, what I'm going to take you through is one, how to find and how to leverage the dashboard inside Highvality related to SEO, what those pieces mean, and what the core metrics are that you should be looking at as a CEO to know whether your search functionality is actually working, both on Highvality as a platform, but in general. There's some core KPIs that you need to be aware of, not a million, but some core. So we'll go through those next week. When we move into week 3, we're going to get into the mechanics of this. So you're going to be tempted as we move through the definitions today of like, but how do I get ranked there? How do I get ranked there? How do I come up here? This is a complex system. So it's no longer here are my 6, 7 keywords that I want to rank for. Now it's very much, how do you get positioned as an authority in the online space in such a way that these LLMs agree with your assertion that you're the best? What type of evidence do you need to be publishing in the online space in multiple capacities so that these platforms deem you the authority? We're going to be getting into that in week 3. So we'll move into the mechanics. Week 4, June 3rd, I'm going to have Braden take you through the back end and how that actually works. Week 5, we're going to start to take all of these insights and concepts and be like, what's my strategic plan? What do I hand to my admin team to move through and support me on the backside? What do I change about our standard operating procedures to make sure every time we publish something, we are optimizing our visibility as a result? So this is not about opening a can of worms for you guys in terms of going back in and rewriting blogs and dropping them over here with a prompt in Claude and then republishing on your site. We're not doing any of those pieces. What we are going to do is look at how this knowledge translates into operational changes inside your business. And then lastly, what we're going to talk about is on that operations side, we're going to consolidate these pieces. I'm going to bring Braden back. This takes us to June 17th, where we're going to be looking at, okay, now as the CEO in 2026, these are the things I need to be aware of. And we want to put you in a position that if you're like, I do not need my SEO guy anymore, what does that conversation actually look like? And where are there going to be gaps sitting in your business? Just to be really clear around where we're heading and why we're doing it. So we've talked about this at length. We talked about this in our AI boot camp. We just talked about this at camp. We know that patients are not just Googling anymore. So they are, but we also know that right now, and it'll change on a weekly basis, that ChatGPT is getting 42 million health inquiries every single day. So it dwarfs what's happening on Google. And also, if you're not showing up in the first 10 listings on Google, you're not being found. So we're going to talk about some of the things that are happening in the Google architecture and in the Google landscape and ecosystem and how you get found there. But we're also going to make sure that you're getting found in all the places that your ideal clients are actually searching. The piece that's important to keep in mind here is the principles that I'm talking with. So you've heard me say this word already, and frankly, I've been talking about this word for years, and that is authority. We are not operating in an era where you are rewarded online for being a jack of all trades. The generalist practitioner is much harder to be found than someone who has an area of a focus and authority. I'm not even calling it a niche, and I haven't called it a niche for a while. I've called it an arena of authority, and this is the exact language that the LLMs are using when they're describing how they are pulling out the best people in any particular jurisdiction. So I want you to think in the language and strategic lens of authority as we're having this conversation, because the tactics the companies use will change. Google is not going to want you only searching on Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT. They're going to want a piece of the pie. So they're going to swing back and they're going to change their AI offerings and how you get found there. But where you're not going to lose is having a lens of authority. So I want you to be really aware of why this is important, that we're staying high level and we're not getting into the weeds. So let's talk about the language of being found, just so you know you'll have access to this. So Nicole will post this recording. I'm going to send Nicole the PDF so you can come back and look at the definitions. And then she's also going to post all of the audits, just so you guys know what that referencing will look like. Well, let's come back here. So we started with this. Let's just cover it again. So you've got a foundational place to come. Search engine optimization. So this is how we get your website to appear in traditional search results. This is where we still want to make sure that you're doing all of the things. You're going through the checklist. You're checking all the boxes so that you actually show up in that context. My apologies. My mom is calling me. I'm going to call her. We're going to call her later. So we want to make sure that you get found in that traditional context. You're not anti-marketing yourself, but I want to be really clear. This idea of paying people to run your SEO, we really need to assess whether that's a line item that needs to be happening at this juncture in 2026. And if it is, we want to understand the full breadth of what these individuals are doing on behalf of your business, because we don't want it to be just confined to Google. The next piece I want you to be aware of, because Google is still at play here, the way that Google is referencing these elements is that it creates AI overviews and summaries. You've probably seen this. Even before people go to find the websites listed below, right at the top, you can ask Google any question and it's going to give you a quick summary and a quick answer to what you are looking for. The ultimate move is that you're the authority that's informing the data that they're pulling for that AI overview at the top. But I want you to understand how Google is leveraging and competing with these LLMs. So this is going to be an area where, again, we're going to want to move through that checklist, and we're going to want to ensure that we are constantly positioning ourselves as an authority and making the decisions as to where we want to be the authority. You might want to be the authority in functional medicine in North America, but we're probably going to want to think a little bit more specific around that regard. So that AI overview piece is a consideration that we're going to want to look at. And when you're speaking to your SEO guy, this is an area that they are going to point to in terms of how their work impacts what it is that you do. The next two terms I want you to just have access to and know that they exist. The first is GEO, Generative Engine Optimization. So this is the technical term for how you get found on the LLM platforms. So this is the technical term that informs what is happening on the LLM side to decide who is an authority. I want to be really clear here for a second. No one exactly knows what their algorithm looks like. Just like we never knew what that looked like with Google. This is why we have to hang out in a principled place. I also want you to know if your person's like, oh, this is exactly how it works. No one knows exactly how it works, and it is subject to change. But this is an area where your anti-marketing will come into play. If your website loads slowly, if you've positioned yourself as an authority in 8 separate areas, if your the language and the paragraphs and the way your page reads are more challenging, if your privacy policy is a PDF versus something that's clickable, if your privacy policy says 2023 and not 2026, these are core things that these LLMs can scrape in less than 2 seconds to decide that you are not on top of your game. If the last blog post you published was 2021 when you were locked in your house and you haven't looked at it since, it's anti-marketing on your behalf, which is where we're starting in the sprint so you can attend to some of those elements first. So it has a lot of tools that it's going to use to determine whether or not you are an authority and you are actively playing the game. And this is why it differs from just the straight SEO question. The next terminology piece is answer engine optimization. How do you search when you go to an LLM? You probably go there. Who's the best ND in Vancouver? Who's a functional medicine expert for fertility in New York City? What can I do about people asking questions? So one of the things that we'll talk about is how effectively the way you are writing and the way your content naturally answers these questions. There are front-end tactics, meaning like short-term proximate tactics that we can use to kind of capitalize on this search functionality. I want you to be weary strategically of just focusing on front-end tactics. We could go in and create a series of Q&A pages, for example, on your website where you're naturally answering these questions. Those will definitely get picked up in LLMs now. It doesn't mean you're going to satisfy all of their authority check marks in terms of where they're going to position you, but it absolutely can help. If you want to start a blog post that you do once a month where you're like, here are the top questions I get in thyroid in my practice, that's not going to hurt you right now, for example, but it's probably not going to be the whole picture. So I want to introduce this idea of understanding this again from a principle perspective versus how do I exploit it from a tactical perspective. There's some tactics you can always try, no harm in doing that, but it's not going to be the whole story. Before I keep going, I just want to check in on any questions. So Philip says he's confused because SEO and search words was a game changer for me over the last 2 years. Do I still need my marketing person? So Philip, let's talk about it as we go through all of these things. So keywords are still going to be something that you're going to rank for, especially if somebody's not competing for you in your immediate environment, but it's a piece of the pie. It's not the whole pie. So this is the part that I want everyone to take away of. It's like SEO is no longer the whole pie of searchability. It's now just a slice. So we just need to be more sophisticated than just the keyword strategy alone. So let's look at one last term here, and that is related to LLM citations. And LLM citations are the most powerful way to be able to show up on an LLM platform. This is a piece strategically we're working through on all of our sites and all of our marketing right now. How do we become the go-to person related to a particular subject matter? And we're going to take a second here. I'm going to have you guys open Claude or ChatGPT. We're going to play around with some of these things. How is it that they start to name you by name when people are searching for an expert, when they are looking for the best naturopathic practice in Calgary? We want Derek's name to come up at the top of that list. And how do we start to ensure that that happens? So there's some steps that you can start to take. There's some things that are going to be inherently and are already inherently built onto the High Validity platform to help support you in this way. But we're going to talk about these things high level strategically as we move through this sprint. Again, I know you're going to want to, we're not going to go into the nuance of all the steps you're going to take for these things today, because where we need to start with in your first steps is let's make sure that what's happening on my site is not working against me. So I don't want us to be picking curtains for our windows when the curtains themselves are just such an air leak of hot and cold air that all of our budget is going to manage that. There's no point in us hanging or painting the windows or putting in new window frames if we've got all of this leakage that's taking place. So the order and sequencing around how we manage this is really going to matter, but this is the gold standard. I want you guys to be ranking on all of the LLMs when people are looking for the best person in your particular arena of authority. So just one last thing. It's like I made this for you, Philip. When we talk about the idea, and this is a big shift of entity versus keyword. So the way that it used to be done, and I've hit this a few different times, is that we want to rank for keywords. We've heard this all the time, right? The new game is that you want to be recognized as an authority. And it's just a slightly different piece. The good news is it means it's going to be pulling from language of your entire ecosystem as opposed to your specific keyword strategy. So both are going to matter, but now it's not just one piece of the pie that we're referring to. It's that we've got multiple other pieces of the pie that we can take action on. And the reality is, if your platform's built the right way, it's probably already happening for you on your behalf. It's going to give you a distinct competitive advantage when we look at it the right way strategically. So let's just take a second, and then we're going to go through the audit questions. I'm just going to let one person in. I'm going to escape here for 1 second off this screen. Pull up ChatGPT. Let's start there because this is where most people are searching right now. I want you to put a query into ChatGPT that you think your ideal client. We're going to play bingo right now. We're going to see if anyone actually comes up in their own search. I want you to go into ChatGPT. I want you to put in the kind of search your ideal client would be putting in to try to find you. Emily gets a point. What did you come up for, Emily? What did you type in?
I typed in, who is the primary naturopathic doctor in North Vancouver for weight gain, menopausal weight gain, treating menopausal weight gain?
Okay, I love that. Now I want you to type in weight loss naturopath, North Vancouver, and see if it happens. Here's what I want you guys to fill the gap in on. This is really important, and it's really important for you to understand in your language piece. I want you to fill the gap in between how you view yourself technically and the kind of words that your ideal client is going to be using at 2 in the morning when they finally hit their limit on how frustrated they are. Melissa's people are going to hit their head and they're going to have a concussion and they're going to be like, I need an answer right now. And they're not even going to be thinking clearly. So what query are they going to be putting into ChatGPT?
Can I share? I'm so excited.
Yeah, talk away.
I had put who's the best concussion clinician in Toronto for adults. The first two were like neurologists or that kind of clinic. And then I was the first rehab clinic. So I was very happy.
That's amazing. I love that. And if you're not coming up, please don't let this derail you. This is why we're having this sprint, so that we can start to move you, to the top. It also sometimes is a reflection of you might be in a more competitive place of authority. And so one of the call to actions coming out of this is like, oh, okay, we've got some authority work to do in this regard. Okay. And some of you deliver care online. So you're putting your local place. But if you deliver care online and you're licensed in Ontario, or you're licensed in Idaho, or you're licensed in Washington State, put your whole state there. So play around with your search pieces. We're not going to spend the whole time searching for ourselves online. You can go down this rabbit hole later today when you're procrastinating on other work. Play around with it too to see where you do come up. So you get a sense of the kinds of things that are pulling that to the surface. Marilyn, yeah, this is a problem too, right? So now you're like, oh, I have to out authority them so that we're getting pulled up. It doesn't matter if you don't like somebody. If they're playing the authority game and they understand how this works, they're going to get to position themselves that way. So it is why this is really important that we are not anti-marketing ourselves. I mean, like, I don't want to talk about SEO, which is basically how I operated for the last 3 years. And we missed out on that piece. So I get it. I get it 100% because I lived that. I lived that too. I'm still bored at the title SEO. So I hear you, but we got to play the game. We got to make sure that's happening on our behalf. Nicole, before I pull my screen up again, can I get you to drop first? Let's just drop both. I'm going to give you 2 handouts here. One is going to be your self-audit on your own site. The second is going to be your vendor audit. And when I say vendor, I didn't want to say the SEO guy audit because that felt unfair. So we're going to call them our vendors who are helping us with the marketing piece, but we equally gave them a series of questions that they can answer on our behalf. So you've got access to both of these pieces. I'm going to just take you through high level what it is that we're actually looking for with all of these elements so that you've got it. And then your call to action, your homework on week 1 is simply to run through these audits. Hand it off to your SEO guy if you have one. If you don't, that's okay. Just put it as a reference point. And for your self audit, you can do that. You can do it yourself. You could also hand it off to your front desk person if you wanted to, as an example. You could give them the link to rewatch this if you wanted to, as an example. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's work that you have to do, but I want this to feel accessible as we move through this sprint. Let me pull up the pieces so we can go through the questions and then we'll get into the general strategy conversation. Are we all okay? See, it's not overwhelming. We're all in it. We're all in it together. Okay, let's just jump up and really quickly talk through what we're going to look at in this audit piece. Jennifer, this is not explicitly part of CAS, but we're building up a whole bunch of different AI modules to help support your teams on the backside. So we've already discussed this. It's really important that you understand this, that we remove any of the anti-marketing pieces. Lack of clarity, the broken links, the branding that might need to be updated. It's not just reserved with what's happening from your LLM SEO strategy or searchability strategy. There's also some things probably within your brand architecture in general that you might want to clean up. This is the week to have that honest conversation with yourself. If you have not updated your branding for 15 years, you should ask 3 or 4 of your ideal clients whether it's still resonant. Ask some trusted colleagues, hey, does this look out of date? So this exercise is not just how do I get found? It is also once you are found, are they going to stay on your site and want to lean in? Because even if you do all the technical things correctly and then they land on your site and they're like, oh, this looks old and kind of sketchy, they're out. People are going to make a determination whether or not the search and your name matches the authority they are looking for in less than 3 seconds. Less than 3 seconds. So the words on your site are going to get you found. They are not going to confirm what people are looking for. So when we talk about anti-marketing, we've got to be really honest around the whole ecosystem. I want you to check in on the ecosystem as you move through these pieces this week. So you're going to see reference in particular on the vendor side to this idea of a technical audit. And I want you to understand what this actually means, because I've had people say this to me before. We're going to run a technical audit on your site. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, but that sounds like something I need. So again, in the spirit of us all having this conversation, like CEOs, I just want you to have an understanding of what we're looking for, because these are things, if you don't hit, I'm just going to say industry standards are related to these pieces, then you're not going to rank. You're not going to rank on Google, and you're not going to get pulled up in these search pieces. So how fast your site loads really matters. Whether or not your site is mobile responsive matters. What your the front end of your URL, and this should not be something you have to worry about, but your person will be looking at this. So all of your URLs should open with HTTP or HTTPS, which is a sign of security on your site. Some sites don't open with that. If you publish straight from the web page that you made on Lovable or Manus, you're not necessarily going to have that same level of security. Built into the back end of your site, you may not know this, is a whole site map. There's a site map, and then there's something called a schema markup. I cannot answer any more technical questions about either one of those, but you can hit certain shortcuts on your site and you can see the whole architecture and the code of how that site has been put together. Not from the point that people will be able to copy it directly, but from a searchability perspective. So you can click and you can see, okay, here's what your H1 headers are. This is how the search engines know how many different headers, how many different blog posts, how many different core authority-driven assets you already have on your site. As an example, with all of these pieces up until this point, these are all things that are naturally already done on High Validity. So like your load speeds are incredibly fast. Everything is automatically mobile responsive. All of it is built to be secure. Your sitemap and your schema markup are all in alignment with best standards for searchability and search function. If you have broken links and missing pages, and I'm going to show you next week how you go into each page and actually see what your score is, that will come up on that page, and it will show you. It'll be like, hey, you've got 3 broken links here. If you switch this, you're going to go from a C to an A. Your image optimization matters. So are there what are called alt tags associated with the image? So if you have an image of a woman eating a peach, sitting in a wheelchair, overlooking an orchard, we're going to want to have an alt tag that describes that. These things are things that will automatically happen on your High Validity site. When we don't have these tags, it anti-markets against you. When you previously hired an SEO guy, he would go into each individual page and add a description. The last thing is that on many of our sites, we have what are called redirects. So I might own MeghanWalker.com, Dr. Meghan Walker, Meghan Walker Rocks. Like I might have 10 URLs and they all redirect into my site. Anytime any of those redirects are broken anywhere on our website for any reason, it's anti-marketing for us. Going in and finding those things manually is going to suck. Having any kind of system that will automatically detect those for you is a real bonus in today's day and age. But I wanted to give you a sense on a technical audit of some of the things that are going to be looked at. For the purpose, and you don't have to know those things, we're going to send those off to your vendor. For the purposes of your self-audit, there's a few key things that we're going to look at. You're either going to hand off to your team or you're going to look at today. So there's a few technical foundations. There's some questions related to content and authority. There's some questions related to searchability performance, off-site authority, and then again, vendor and operational accountability that you're going to be able to answer to. It's going to take you about 15 minutes, so it's doable in this week. So here are the questions that we're going to look at for you. Is your website mobile optimized? And how fast does your homepage load on mobile? And this does not necessarily have to be, well, do I have a timer that I'm running to know how fast it's loading on mobile? I want you to pull up your own site on your mobile device and see whether or not it's loading like quickly, or whether like there's still a page coming, or there's still, and I want you to do it where you actually have a secure signal, so that this is not a function of your cellular signal. This is an actual function of your website. Is your privacy policy a live page on your site or a downloadable PDF? When you go down to the bottom, can you just click it and your privacy policy comes up? Any of those things that are down across the bottom of your page that are clickable, privacy policy being the main one. Sometimes people have other legal waivers that have to be there as part of their jurisdiction. Those should be clickable and readable, not downloadable as a PDF. The LLMs want to know that you have done your homework, that they are accurate for this date, and that they can click on them and read them. You'll see some resources that are like, you should also have on your website. I just want to speak to this really quickly. Some people on their websites literally will have a link at the bottom, and you might see it that say, hey, LLMs, read this first. And that was working really well 3 months ago, where it gave the LLM instructions on how to interpret their website. I was like, Braden, should we have this on all of our high value sites? He's like, Megan, it's already built into the back end. So there's a lot of things that are already taking place on your behalf that I can't even name for you, which is why Braden's coming in on this piece. Do you have a dedicated about or provider page with your credentials, specialty, and bio in a structured format? Structured format means it's outlined clearly. My background, my credentials, my speaking gigs, these are all things that speak to your authority. This is not the place for you to be modest. It's also not the place for you to plant a big, giant wall of text. You will find when you start to read your SEO report cards, it'll be like, hey, the language is really good here and you've used lots of key searchable words. And also, could you maybe be more concise? I get that a lot. So we want to tighten it up because what do these search tools know? They know that people don't read. Do you publish original content, blog, case studies, FAQs, at least monthly? The natural question I have here is what happens when I post videos? What we're seeing increasingly is that all of these search tools can access transcripts related to these videos. Technical question for Braden, should we be redundantly posting a transcript below the videos to optimize these pieces? I don't know the answer to that kind of question, but this is the kind of question that I actually want you to start to write down and think about as you're moving through this exercise. Number 5, are your specialties and conditions consistent across your website? Consistency matters. It's really hard to position you as an authority if you're an expert on this over here and you're an expert on this over here. Like, tighten your brand exposure up and make sure your messaging is consistent across all platforms. Lauren.
I just had a question about blogs. So we write our own blogs, but then we obviously use AI to assist us in cleaning them up. So one question I have is that still considered original content? Like, how is that viewed by AI?
Yeah, it depends on how much you're getting it to clean up. If you're saying to Claude, write me a blog about, you're going to run into difficulty on that. There are AI checkers that you can drop your blogs into, originally designed and still utilized with students. So if my daughter writes anything now, and she's terrified of like LLMs being a problem for her school-wise, if she writes anything, she drops it into 3 different AI checkers because she knows the AI checkers her teachers are going to use to make sure that nothing's going to get flagged before she's sent it in. And I've watched her write things by hand that gets flagged in one of the 3, which means it's going to get caught on the other side. One thing I will say, certainly on the high validity side, and I'm not trying to just be like plugging high validity. It's just we spent a ton of time strategically thinking about this because we know you don't. So when you write your blog post there's literally a button that is optimizing for search function. It will automatically clean these pieces up. So you can go and write your rough blog and plop it right into high validity and ask it to clean it up for you so that it matches your authority, so that it matches all of these pieces. It's one way that you can leverage the platform. But I would be weary in general of going into Claude and being like, write me a whole blog post on infertility in my voice. Go. You are going to want to have your hands on these things. The LLM tools are going to get more and more sophisticated in determining whether they actually are the author of the stuff they're now searching. So it's a bit of a nuanced question, Lauren. Question 6. We already did this. Have you tested whether ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity cite you when someone asks for a practitioner in your specialty and region? Go ask your mom to search for you because she's not going to use the language that you would use. and see whether you're still coming up for her, and test it across different platforms because they are going to work with slightly different algorithms. I do want you to look this piece up, and it is one of the things on your overarching marketing dashboard that's built onto Highvalidity that we can pull from. We can link your Google keyword, or sorry, your Google Analytics account. I want you to know, and you need to know this as a CEO in general, how many new patient inquiries per month come from organic search? And how is that trending? This is the blood work of your business on the marketing side. So Philip's already said this is a really important part of his business. That's great. We are not dismantling that, but we're going to make sure we have all the pieces of the pie. And let's look at what his numbers look like. And then let's start to look at what his numbers look like when we have the whole authority strategy in place with respect to searchability. Number 8, is your social media presence consistent with your website and credentials, positioning, and specialties, especially on a personal brand side? If you have a link to your Etsy account on your social media platform, and you have your personal brand over here because you are a doctor, it's going to be like, we don't know which Lauren we're talking about here. So we want to make sure that your brand is consistent across all places. In general, you want to do that. If it's confusing to an LLM, it's also confusing to real humans. Number 9, what's your current monthly spend on SEO services? Some of you are spending a lot on this. I want you to just check in on that. I want you to be able to answer at the end of the 6 weeks, do I still need to invest in this piece or not? That should be a very clear answer that you have for yourself. Some of you might want to based on the amount of volume that you're moving through, but you're also going to understand this is one piece of the pie. And then the last question, you'll get this from your vendor survey. If you canceled your SEO service tomorrow, what would actually break? So we want to be able to understand that piece as well. So I'm going to post the rest of this underneath the replay of this conversation so that you can really have a sense of what some of the numbers are that you can be looking at in terms of Google Analytics, a little bit more specificity around some of these some of the elements that we were talking about today. I want to make sure that we leave room to be able to have a strategic conversation as part of our session today. So I want to be mindful of time, but here's what we're going to look at doing this week. So I want you to complete your self-audit. It's going to take you 15 minutes. So you will have things that come out of it. Identify those as top priorities. Are you going to handle them? Is your marketing person going to handle them? Is your SEO person going to handle them? Is your front desk going to handle it? If you are paying someone to support you with SEO now, I want you to take that vendor audit and hand it over to them. If you want to rewrite it, if you want to copy and paste it and put it into an email, go nuts, but ask them to answer those questions for you so that you have a sense of what is actually happening on the backside. You have a sense of what their acumen is to be able to support you moving forward. And then I want you to be able to be prepared to bring your top 3 findings to next week's call, mostly because I just want to hold you accountable to doing those things.